Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Hack, and in this video we are updating one of my favorite builds of all time. That of course is the solo 1-bar Magicka Sorcerer build called Infinity. This build is now even stronger and easier than it's ever been before. Long-lasting or free damaging abilities ensure that you never run out of Magicka. Massive health recovery and huge damage shields mean your health is always topped off and ready to go, making it nearly impossible to die. This is basically the easiest way to play a Magicka Sorcerer in the Elder Scrolls Online while still being extremely powerful. So lots of updates, lots to talk about for this new chapter on the Magicka Sorcerer. Let's jump right into the video. Alright everybody, we are back on the Magicka Sorcerer with an update to our solo 1-bar build. I call this the Infinity build just because it has pretty insane sustain across the board in terms of your Magicka sustain using heavy attacks. We've got basically infinite health recovery, and that can scale up or down depending on how you want to play this build. But let's go ahead and jump into the buff stats before we get into things and look at our character sheet. Let me just use my potion, and here we go. Max stats, 34k max Magicka, ridiculous 31,000 max health, almost 18k max stamina, so the resources are pretty insane on this build. You can see buffed right now, we got almost 5k health recovery. Like I said, that can go lower or higher, depending on your jewelry glyphs, you can customize that. 4,500 is going to be our base spell damage. Of course, this is for the 1-bar setup. You can get better stats on the 2-bar setup with a different mythic item. We'll talk about that a little bit towards the end of the video. And then spell crits, about 31, 32%. And then our resistances looking very good here, close to 25, 26,000 for both of those. And of course, we do have 64 points into max Magicka, being a Magicka Sorcerer. And let me find my food buff. There's just so many buffs on this build. Bewitched Sugar Skulls, that's the one. This increases all of our max stats by even more. Plus, we have about 400 health recovery. There's actually other foods that give you more health recovery, but I think just for the overall, spread of stats, Bewitched Sugar Skulls is probably going to be your best option. In terms of the Mundus stone, I am using Steed Mundus on this particular build still. This gives you a nice bonus to health recovery. It definitely helps with your survivability. Plus, the movement speed is nice since we're not running the usual, sorcerer armor buff for speed. This kind of fills in the gap for that, and you still feel pretty quick on this particular setup. Of course, we have all of these major and minor buffs. We'll talk about where these come from in a minute. If you've been following the High Isle chapter, you probably know what is delivering all these massive stat bonuses. But that is the basic stat sheet. Let's talk about the race next. I have stayed with High Elf for this particular build. Couple of good reasons for that. I think Spell Recharge gives us good stamina or Magicka Recovery, whichever is lowest. Plus, when you use an ability or a channeled cast time, basically heavy attacks on this particular build, you do take 5% less damage, so that is very nice. Sirbane's Boon gives us the 2,000 max Magicka, which is what we want. And then, of course, Elemental Talent gives us the weapon and spell damage. So High Elf is a really good choice for this particular build. Of course, you could make this work with any offensive race, I would say. Dark Elf, Khajiit would be interesting. Even Orc, would be kind of interesting as well. So up to you. I'm using High Elf on this particular one. And then the other thing I want to talk about is potions. So I am using currently Tri-Stat potions on this build. Now, this is not necessary. The basic buff that you need comes from a health potion. So what we want is Major Fortitude. Most potions that give you health back will give you this health recovery bonus as well. That 30% extra health recovery is going to give us almost 1,000 extra health recovery on this setup. So any potion that gives you health is what you want. I'm using Tri-Stat potions currently, but I believe that is pretty much all the basics. So yeah, let's talk about the gear next. All right, there is a lot going on this build. It is not complicated, but it's not simple at the same time. I have lots of different sets going on. I remember there is a written guide, link in the description, if you want to see alternate sets or the full, setup with traits and weights and glyphs, everything is there. But our first 5-piece set on this build, as it has been in the past, is typically a health recovery build. And the reason for that is sorcerers actually have a very powerful health recovery passive, gives you about 20% bonus health recovery. Plus, if we run heavy armor, plus if we run, you know, a 5-piece set that also gives us a health recovery bonus, plus if we run a couple of health recovery glyphs, a health recovery Mundus, you see what I'm getting at. We can stack health recovery very high on this build with a set like this. So Alessian Order is what I have gone with for this particular version of the build. I have gone with the Permafrost set in the past. That is still a good alternative. Permafrost only gives you that bonus health recovery when your shield is active. So I figured for this patch, let's just have health recovery all the time. So this is pretty much a flat bonus to health recovery that depends on your armor. So the more armor you have with the Alessian set, the more health recovery you get, up to about 1300 maximum. So on the 2-bar version of this build, this actually gets much higher because we can run our armor in addition to a mythic. So this set is going to scale nicely no matter how you want to play this particular build. But just on the 1-bar version gives us about 1,000 health recovery, which is pretty nice. This is a heavy armor set. I believe it comes from Cyrodiil. If you don't PvP, that's totally fine. You can usually find this on guild traders since it is tradable. So we are going to run this on the body. It is heavy armor. So we got the heavy chest, heavy waist, hands, legs, and feet. Divines on the traits for those, if you can get that with Max Magicka. It's going to be our glyph on those armor pieces. So 5 heavy on the body. So that is set number 1. Set number 2. Let's just jump right to it. Let's cut to the chase. Oakensoul Ring is going to be a very powerful option if you're interested in running 1-bar builds in the Elder Scrolls Online. Why is that? Well, basically for this mythic item, you can't bar swap anymore. So once you have this equipped, you are stuck on your primary bar or whatever bar you're on. Cannot swap to the other bar, but you get lots and lots of nice buffs. The basic, concept of this is most of these buffs are going to replace what you would have on your back bar. So usually you'd run like an armor buff on your back bar. That's on the Oakensoul Ring. Normally you'd run a damage buff like Major Brutality, Major Sorcery. Those are on the Oakensoul Ring. Normally you'd run a crit chance buff. That's on here too. You get Major Prophecy and Major Savagery. In addition, we get a lot of other nice, really nice buffs that you don't typically get for solo builds, which makes the Oakensoul Ring very powerful for solo. One of those, for example, Major Berserk, that increases your overall damage by 10%. Another one, very good, Major Force, increases your crit damage. You've got Major Protection, reducing your damage taken. You've got the minor recovery buffs, Minor Fortitude, Minor Intellect, Minor Endurance, increasing all of your recovery, which, by the way, is going to stack with our Major recovery buff from the health potion that we just talked about. And actually, Major Heroism, one of the best buffs on this particular mythic. This massively increases your ult generation, and we'll talk about that when we get to our ultimate. But yeah, Oakensoul Ring is looking pretty good heading into the High Isle chapter. If you're interested in this style of build, definitely work on picking this up. Now, in addition to that, we're going to run 2 other pieces of jewelry here, Ring of and Necklace of the Trainee. And this is just a basic 2-piece set that we could throw on for some really nice stats. So we get extra health and extra magicka for running 2 pieces of jewelry. So that'll complete the jewelry for us. For the weapon, if you have access to the Maelstrom Arena, I definitely recommend a Maelstrom Lightning Staff. You do not need the perfected version. That just adds a little bit of extra penetration. Not really essential, but the bonus that you get from either the normal or the perfected staff buffs your heavy attacks. And heavy attacks are about 50% of what we do on this build. That's why we have, basically infinite magicka sustain. And this is going to give a sizable buff to your heavy attack. So that's definitely recommended. Front bar, Maelstrom Lightning Staff with the Shock enchant. That's going to help us proc off balance. Off balance equals even more heavy attack damage. Then we've got the Precise trait here, increasing our crit chance. So that is your weapon. And then if you've been following along, we got 2 more slots left. That's going to be the monster set. You have a lot of options here. I've basically made this flexible. Now, in terms of damage, I really like the Maw of the Infernal set. This summons the Daedroth for about 15 seconds, but it can also be summoned every 15 seconds. So you basically have close to 100% uptime with this particular build, since you can trigger this off heavy attacks. So for a heavy attack Sorc, the Maw of the Infernal is a really good set. Plus it gives us that about 1,000 max magicka, and I'll show you what this likes when we look at the rotation. So this is a good option for more damage. If you want something for even more survivability, what I recommend in that case would be Ice Heart. Ice Heart on the helm and shoulders is going to give you more crit chance, some more damage. It does nice AoE damage as well, that frost damage AoE effect. Plus you get about a 6,000 damage shield for 6 seconds. So that's going to increase our survivability a lot as well. Since that's automatic, you don't have to think about it. That's actually a very nice option. So those would be kind of my top two, either Ice Heart for survivability or Maw of the Infernal if you want a more damage-focused approach. Let me switch back to Maw of the Infernal. What I recommend for this in terms of weights, if you can get it, is 1 medium and 1 light. This is going to ensure that we have all the armor types. We have light, we have heavy on the body, and then we have medium. So we're going to max out that Undaunted passive. We'll look at that in a little bit. But that's basically 6% bonus magicka, stamina, and health. That's why our overall stats on this build are so insane. So that is the setup. I know it's a little bit more complicated this time around. Let me go over it one more time. Alessian on the body for that health recovery. We are running the Oaken Soul Mythic Ring with 2 pieces of trainee for our jewelry. And then we've got the Maw of the Infernal monster set plus the Maelstrom Lightning Staff. That's going to be the 1-bar setup. Now, as I said, you can run this as a 2-bar build if you would like to, but obviously you're not going to be able to run the Oaken Soul Ring if you want to play with a full 2 bars on the setup. Now, if you want to do that, I would recommend going back to the mythic that I used previously on this build, and that is called Gaze of Sithis. Gaze of Sithis plays really well with this particular setup because it just basically has all the same stats that we were going for. It has lots of max health. It has health recovery, about 1,000 health recovery, and 4,000 extra armor. So you will get actually higher armor, you'll get higher health, and much higher health recovery if you go with Gaze of Sithis. The downside, of course, is you don't have all the nice buffs, like the Major Heroism, Major Berserk, Major Protection, so you don't have quite as much offensive potential, but the defensive potential is definitely a little bit stronger. So you can look into that if you're interested. I will have a full 2-bar build on the written guide. Link for that will be in the description if you want to check that out. But that said, let's go ahead and go over the skills for the 1-bar build next. Like I said, very, very simple. I tried to make this as simple as possible with just a couple of damaging effects that have a longer duration and then just heavy attacks as you let those dots go on. So first skill here is going to be Summon Volatile Familiar. This is our Scamp pet. If you're familiar with pet builds, you know this one, you love this one. This does good damage in an AoE. I tried to go with all AoE damage on this particular build. That means it's going to be equally good for like grinding XP, clearing through dungeons, and for single target boss fights. But the nice thing about this, like I said, it damages all the targets in the area with a nice pulse attack. Plus, for AoE and for trash mobs, you do get a stun at the end. It's about an 8-second duration until you hit that stun. So make sure you let this go the full duration. Otherwise, you won't get the stun effect at the end. But this is really nice. It also gives us access to some very powerful passives in the Daedric Summoning skill line. We'll look at those in a minute. Next skill, Mystic Orb. This is an interesting one. I decided to put this on. This is from Undaunted, by the way, your last ability here. Now, this to me is very similar to the Scamp. It does a pulse damage about every 1 second on this one in an AoE. So it is going to be able to hit multiple targets around you to do damage. But the nice thing about this too is it has the same duration as your Volatile Familiar. So this is up for 10 seconds. Your Familiar, you have to recast this about every 10 seconds. So it's very easy to maintain in the rotation. You just cast one after the other, and you're good to go. Same thing, in fact, with our next skill, Unstable Wall of Storms. Now, I chose this particular morph because, again, it has that 10-second duration. So it's going to be super easy to maintain this rotation. It's really simple. Now, the nice thing about this, too, is you get the burst damage at the end. The Unstable Wall explodes. Plus, this is the important part, you guys. Unstable Wall of Storms sets concussed enemies off balance. Now, this is extremely helpful for a heavy attack build. Why? Well, it gives you bonus damage. Gives you a ton of extra damage with heavy attacks when hitting an off-balance target. So we'll talk about this more in the rotation, but basically you want to make sure your Scamp is cast. You cast your Mystic Orb next. Then you cast Unstable Wall. Boom, that's going to set the enemy off balance, and then you can hit them with 3 to 4 super buffed heavy attacks because, again, they are off balance. They're going to take more damage from those heavies. So this is from Destruction Staff. If I forgot to mention it, definitely choose the Unstable Morph because it's going to align with our rotation much better. Next up, we got another Destruction Staff ability, and I actually don't use this one very much, but I found this was very good on this particular setup, Elemental Susceptibility. Now, this is similar to Elemental Drain, which is the morph that most people take. It still gives you the Major Breach debuff, which is going to be very important, especially on bosses. You want to debuff that armor so your attacks can do more damage. But why I like this, though, 60-second duration. This is very easy to manage. Some boss fights, you'll only need to recast this like maybe one time, and then you don't have to worry about it. Plus, you also get extra damaging status effects. So it's going to help you with some extra burning, chilled, or concussed. Every 6 seconds, it actually rotates those status effects, which is pretty cool, especially against a single boss. So I do recommend you check out this one. It's a pretty nice effect. And then last but not least, here's our sort of emergency survival / heal. And I'll explain what I mean about this. So Hardened Ward on this build is huge. We have a big health pool. We have a big Magicka pool. So we can get about a 17k damage shield for 6 seconds. That's really strong. So think about this. On this build, you always have about 5,000 health recovery. So every 2 seconds, you're getting healed for about 5,000 health. So if you take damage, you can cast this to give you your health pool a shield over the top of it. And then that health recovery is going to heal you up underneath the shield. So it's basically like a way to maximize your healing using health recovery on this build. Now you can cast this before you going into a fight. You can cast it before, like a boss is going to heavy attack you. The nice thing about this too, you guys, is this actually shields you and your pets. Don't forget about that. So the Scamp on this build can be vulnerable, especially if you are in a big crowd of enemies. I think you'll see that a little bit in the gameplay that I'm going to show later on. Scamp does take damage, especially from multiple enemies trying to knock it down. So you will want to use this just kind of as a preventative measure to keep you and your pet alive. It's really helpful for that. If I didn't mention it, this is in Daedric Summoning. That's the second to last ability there. Choose Hardened Ward as your morph of choice. And then last but not least, one of the best ultimates in the game, honestly, Greater Storm Atronach. This also comes from Daedric Summoning. It does very good AoE and single target damage. When you call it down, it also does a stun in the area. So sometimes I will save this if I know a boss fight is going to summon some adds on me. I'm going to save it for when those adds spawn, and I'm just going to drop it down on its head, stun everything automatically, and then just start doing damage. Now, the best thing about this on this setup, using the Oaken Soul Ring, remember we have Major Heroism active all the time, 100%. Combine that with the fact that Greater Storm Atronach has one of the longest durations in the game for ultimates, almost 30 seconds. That's going to give you enough time to regenerate almost the same amount of ultimate. So by the time the Greater Storm Atronach is done, you should be at about 160 ultimate. To me, that is so awesome. That means I only have to wait maybe 1 or 2 more seconds, and then I can cast another Great Storm Atronach again. So I can basically chain cast these and almost always have one active in a fight. It's really cool. Let me actually show you guys what that looks like. We'll do a quick rotation here on a boss so you can see what I'm talking about. So the nice thing, again, using that Oaken Soul Ring, all of our buffs are active. We don't really have to do anything. You can use your potion if you want to amp up your health recovery a little bit, but that's literally it to set up for a fight. That's all you need to do. Now, in terms of your abilities, you're going to want to debuff the boss with your Elemental Susceptibility morph, then pop down your ultimate if you've got it, and then catch those 3 AoE effects in a row. We've got the Scamp, we've got the Orb, and then the Unstable Wall. Once the wall goes down, you should trigger off balance pretty quick. Then you're going to go right into heavy attacks. So about 3 or 4 heavy attacks in a row, and then your AoE should be ready to recast. All right, so let's go ahead and do that, starting with our debuff. Ult on the ground. Block that, cast my AoEs 1, 2, 3. You can see there's the off balance. We go into my heavy attacks. Those are going to get buffed by the off balance effect. My AoEs are dropping, so I'm going to recast that. And then I can just stand in the red here. My health recovery is so good on this build. You can see if my health goes down, it just goes back up. Redo my AoEs. You can see I got another off balance, so this is good timing. I can do my heavy attacks, 1, 2, and 3. And look, my ultimate is already up, you guys. I can recast it already. Let me debuff again. Do those AoEs. So I'm getting off balance a little bit late here. So I'm going to actually do an extra heavy attack. Even though my AoEs aren't active, that's probably fine. Let me rebuff those. Haven't had to use my shield even on this fight. For tougher fights, you definitely will, but that's also nice. Your health recovery is insane on this build. So one more cast should do it here. You can see I got a Storm Atronach again. So that was what, 3 ults in that fight. Plus all my dots and my heavy attacks does pretty good damage. Okay, so quickly, let's talk about the passives you need. You're not using all your skills, obviously, on the 1-bar setup, so you won't need all of these. For Dark Magic, the main one is Unholy Knowledge. This reduces the cost of your main abilities. That is definitely useful. Daedric Summoning, here's where we get a lot of the power on this build, you guys. First of all, Rebate. Pick this up. If you lose your Scamp, you get Magicka and Stamina back. Power Stone, that's going to reduce the cost of your Greater Storm Atronach. That's why we can have it up so consistently. Very good passive. Daedric Protection is what we talked about in the beginning. Why I picked a Sorcerer for this, health recovery focus build. 20% bonus health and stamina recovery. While we have our Daedric Summoning ability slotted, we have like 3 or 4 of them here. So we're good to go on that one. And then Expert Summoner. Another great passive, you guys. 8% max health. That's a ton of health on this build just for having our pet, our Volatile Familiar active on the front bar. For Storm Calling, you will want Capacitor, Energize for the shock damage, Amplitude for the bonus damage, and then Expert Mage for the extra spell damage. So get all of these ones as well. Weapon passives is really easy. All of your Destruction Staff passives, you want all of those. Now let's talk about armor passives, because remember, we're using 5 heavy. So most of your stats are going to come from the heavy armor passives. You get extra armor, extra sustain, but the main one here, Constitution, gives you 20% health recovery. So again, with all of our stacking percentage bonuses for health recovery, we can get that stat really, really high. Now, we're not running any guild skills on the 1-bar version, but I did mention the Undaunted Metal passive. You can see you're getting 6% bonus stats. That ends up being a lot of resources on this build. Make sure you pick up that one. And then obviously your racial skills, Alchemy, Medicinal Use, that's going to be important for making that health recovery bonus last as long as possible too. Let's look at champion points. As usual, these will be listed in the written guide. I'll have that broken down for you by 300, 600, 900, and 1200 CP, so you can see those in the written form. But just as a basic overview, the green tree here, I haven't really changed. My typical slotted stars are going to be Steed's Blessing for that movement speed. We've got Treasure Hunter for the treasure chests, Rationer, a little bit of extra duration on our food and drink buffs, and then Liquid Efficiency gives you the chance not to consume a potion. Those are pretty typical for my builds. Now, the blue tree, I have mixed things up a little bit here. For our slotted stars, we've got Biting Aura, Deadly Aim, Fighting Finesse, and then the main one, probably the most powerful one for this particular build, is actually here. This is called Weapons Expert, and this gives you a 15% damage bonus to your heavy attacks. So I think overall, the most impactful one for this particular build, since we're doing so much heavy attacks, definitely pick up Weapons Expert first, and you can go on from there. Don't forget as well, you do have defensive passives here down in Staving Death. You'll want to pick up things like Quick Recovery, but especially Preparation, because that's going to reduce your damage taken by another 10%. For the red tree, pretty typical here as well. We went with Rejuvenation for some extra recovery, Fortified for some extra armor. Remember, armor, using Alessian as your heavy set, is going to equate to even more health recovery. And then we've got the Boundless Vitality star for more health. And then my 4th slotted star, Bastion, that's going to increase the size of that Hardened Ward damage shield. It's pretty good on a sorcerer, honestly. So those are the main slotted stars. Again, if you want to see all the details there, make sure to check out the written guide for this one. Link will be in the description. Last but not least, we can go over the outfit style if you're curious. Staff is just the Maelstrom staff. That's what it looks like. Under outfit styles, I am using something different here. This is a light armor style, and it is called, right here, Ancient Daedric. I'm using that on all of the body pieces, a little bit of gold, purple, and black. All right, everybody, and with that said, that is going to wrap up our latest update to the Infinity Magicka Sorcerer 1-bar build for the Elder Scrolls Online. Hope you guys enjoyed this one and you found it informative. Of course, if you did, do me a favor, crush that like button. It absolutely helps out the channel. Make sure you're subscribed for many more ESO builds and guides. And let me know what you think down in the comments section below. Would you like to see more 1-bar easy builds just like this one? And what do you think of the new Oaken Soul Ring Mythic? Will you be getting this for yourself? Definitely be curious what you think down in the comments section below. Of course, if you have any more questions on the build, many more details are found over in the written guide, talking about alternate gear sets, alternate skills. We do have a full 2-bar version of the build using a different mythic item that is just as powerful. In fact, maybe even a little bit more powerful, so make sure you check that out, as well as the full breakdown of passives, CP point allocations, a companion build, and a whole lot more. Link for that, again, will be in the description if you want to check that out. Finally, if you're looking for ways to support the channel, remember we do have a YouTube membership where our channel members can unlock rewards. Depending on your tier, you can unlock things like early access to videos or access to our exclusive members-only build library. We've got lots of updates coming for that with the High Isle chapter, by the way. So if that sounds good to you, click on that join button down below for more information. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. Hope you're doing well. Stay safe out there, and I will see you around in the next video.